The first time Daniel kissed me, he was standing in his wedding suit, 10 minutes away from walking down the aisle with someone else. His hand was still shaking when he pushed the dressing room door shut behind him. Outside, I could hear his mother laughing, his fiancée's relatives taking pictures, and the wedding planner asking where the groom had disappeared. Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the building who could save him. Then he whispered, "Evan, if I go out there, I'll ruin 3 lives. If I stay here, I'll ruin everyone's idea of who I am." I should have told him to run. Instead, I asked, "Why did you kiss me?" He looked down at the gold ring on his finger. "Because you're the only person I've ever wanted to run toward." 3 months earlier, I thought Daniel was straight. I also thought he was my best friend. I was wrong about both things, but I didn't understand how wrong until the morning I found a wedding invitation addressed to him and a woman named Sophie. Daniel and I had shared an apartment for almost 2 years. We were both adults in our late 20s, old enough to know what we wanted and old enough to pretend we didn't. I had never hidden that I was gay. My family knew. My friends knew. Even our landlord knew because the first week we moved in, I accidentally left a rainbow flag in the washing machine and he handed it back to me with a smile. Daniel knew too. He had never made a cruel comment. He had never acted uncomfortable. He was the kind of roommate who remembered exactly how I took my coffee, who waited outside the clinic when I had a minor surgery, and who always fell asleep on the couch during movies with his shoulder pressed against mine. When people asked if we were together, Daniel would laugh too quickly. "No," he would say. "Evan is my roommate. Not friend. Not brother. Roommate." I told myself it didn't matter. The night I found the invitation, Daniel came home after midnight. He was wearing a navy shirt, his hair wet from the rain, and a smile that looked like it had been forced into place. "You're late," I said. "Work ran over. You work at a restaurant. Did the soup need emotional support?" He smiled, but it disappeared when he saw the envelope on the table. I hadn't opened it. I didn't need to. His name was written across the front in gold letters, followed by a woman's name I didn't recognize. Daniel picked it up so quickly that the envelope nearly tore. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." Yet. He put it in his jacket pocket. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "After the honeymoon." His face changed. For 1 second he looked frightened. Then the familiar wall came back up. "It's not a big deal. You're getting married." "I'm not getting married tomorrow." "That's not the part I'm stuck on." He walked to the kitchen and turned on the tap even though there were no dishes in the sink. He always did that when he was avoiding a conversation. "Her name is Sophie," he said. "We've been seeing each other for a year." "A year?" "Yes. You brought her here." "No. Why not?" He stared at the water. "Because she doesn't like the apartment." "No. Why didn't you bring her here?" Daniel shut off the tap. The silence between us became so loud that I could hear the refrigerator humming. Finally he said, "Because I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable." I almost laughed. I had met his dates before. I had helped him choose birthday gifts. I had even slept on the floor once because he wanted privacy with a woman he brought home. "You didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, or you didn't want her to ask why your roommate knows everything about you." His jaw tightened. "You're making this into something it isn't." That sentence hurt more than I expected. "What is it, then?" "A wedding. A normal life. Something I want." The word normal sat between us like an insult neither of us wanted to name. I nodded slowly. "Congratulations." He looked at me, and the hurt in his eyes confused me. He was the one getting married. He was the one who had kept it secret. "I wanted you to be there," he said. "Why?" "Because you're important to me. Important enough to be invited, but not important enough to be told." He didn't answer. The next morning, I began looking for another apartment. Daniel noticed within 2 days. He noticed everything about me, even when he pretended not to. "You're moving," he said from the doorway of my room. "I'm considering it." "Why?" "Because I don't want to live with someone who is planning a wedding behind my back." "You could still stay. I could also swallow glass." "That doesn't mean I should." He stepped inside. "You're angry." "I'm embarrassed." "Why?" "Because I thought I mattered differently." Daniel froze. I hadn't meant to say it. The words had escaped before I could protect them. "Differently how?" he asked. I looked at him. "Forget it." "No. Tell me." "Daniel, you're getting married. I'm not going to stand here and explain feelings you should have noticed yourself." He took one step toward me, then stopped as though an invisible line had appeared on the floor. "I do notice," he said quietly. That was the first time he scared me. Not because he was angry. Because he sounded like someone who had been holding a confession behind his teeth. The wedding planning became the center of the apartment. Sophie's flowers arrived in boxes. Her invitations covered the dining table. Daniel's mother called every evening to discuss seating arrangements and family photographs. I became invisible whenever she visited. She was polite to me, but only in the way people are polite to furniture they don't want to move. One afternoon, she saw the photo of Daniel and me from a hiking trip. His arm was around my shoulder. We were both laughing at something outside the frame. She picked it up. "You should take this down before Sophie comes over," she said. "Why?" "Because some things can be misunderstood." "What exactly is there to misunderstand?" Her smile tightened. "Daniel is starting a family. He doesn't need old distractions around him." Daniel walked in before I could respond. He heard the last sentence. "Mom," he said. She placed the photo face down. "What?" "I'm only trying to help." He looked at me, then at the photo. "Put it back." His mother stared at him. "Daniel." I said, "Put it back." She left the room without another word. I picked up the photo. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Yes, I did." "Why?" He looked at me for so long that my heart began beating too fast. "Because she was wrong." "About what?" He turned away. "About you being a distraction." That night, Daniel slept on the couch. I knew because I heard him moving around at 3 in the morning. At 3:17, I walked into the living room and found him sitting in the dark, holding his phone without looking at it. "You okay?" I asked. He put the phone face down. "Do you ever feel like you're watching your life happen to someone else?" "Every time I look at my bank account." He didn't smile. "I'm serious." "I know." He rubbed his hands together. "Sophie is good." "That sounds like a complaint." "She's kind. She's stable. My parents love her. Everyone says we make sense." "And do you?" He stared at the floor. "I don't know. You've been with her for a year." "I know. Do you love her?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I knew the answer before he did. "Daniel," I whispered, "you can't marry someone if you're not sure." He looked at me then, and his eyes were full of panic. "What if being sure isn't the problem? Then what is? What if I know exactly what I want, but I'm afraid of what it says about me?" I stopped breathing. He stood up too quickly, knocking his knee against the coffee table. "I'm going to bed." "Daniel." He walked away. The next day, Sophie came to the apartment for the first time. She was beautiful, confident, and observant. She looked at the photographs on the wall, the 2 coffee mugs beside the sink, the spare key hanging beside Daniel's, and the jacket he had left on the back of my chair. Then she looked at me. "So you're Evan." "That's me. I've heard a lot about you." Hopefully some of it was true. She smiled, but her eyes remained careful. Daniel appeared from the kitchen carrying 3 glasses of water. Sophie took one. "Your mother told me you might be moving," she said to me. I glanced at Daniel. "Did she?" "She thinks it would be easier after the wedding." "For whom?" Sophie's expression changed. "Daniel is starting a new chapter." "So am I." Daniel placed the 3rd glass on the table. "Can we not do this?" Sophie looked at him. "Do what?" "Make Evan feel like he's being removed from the apartment before the wedding." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." For the first time, Sophie looked genuinely hurt. "Daniel, I'm not asking you to choose between us." He went pale. She turned to me. "But I do need boundaries." "You should talk to him about that." "I have." "Then why are you talking to me?" She looked at Daniel again. "Because he changes the subject every time I ask why. He looks at you like you're the person he's waiting for." The room went silent. Daniel's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Sophie stared at him. I stared at the broken glass. Daniel whispered, "Sophie." She shook her head. "Don't." Then she walked out. Daniel didn't follow her. He stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by broken glass, looking like the secret had finally become too heavy to carry. "I never wanted to hurt her," he said. "But you did." "I know. Do you love her?" He covered his face with both hands. "I care about her." "That isn't what I asked." He lowered his hands. "No." My chest tightened. "No, I don't love her." He took a breath that sounded painful. "I love you." I had imagined hearing those words in 100 different ways. In a quiet bedroom. On a rainy street. After a long friendship had finally become something honest. I had never imagined hearing them next to broken glass while his fiancée cried in the hallway. I stepped back. You don't get to say that now. I know. You don't get to keep me hidden for 2 years and then confess because your wedding is 3 weeks away. I know. You don't get to make me the reason you finally tell the truth. He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. I know. Then why did you say it? Because you deserved to hear it before I lost the courage again. I wanted to touch him. I wanted to forgive him. I wanted to protect myself from ever needing forgiveness from him again. Instead, I told him to leave. Daniel spent the night at a hotel. The next morning, he called off the wedding. Sophie didn't forgive him immediately. She shouldn't have. She told both of us that she had been planning a future with a man who had been emotionally somewhere else the entire time. Daniel accepted every word. He returned the ring. He called his parents. He told them the wedding was cancelled and that no one was allowed to blame Sophie. His mother blamed me anyway. She arrived at the apartment with Daniel's father and stood outside our door like they had come to collect something that belonged to them. You ruined my son's life, she said. I looked at Daniel. He stepped forward. No, Mom. I nearly ruined my own life. She pointed at me. You manipulated him. Daniel's voice became firm. Evan never asked me to leave Sophie. He never touched me. He never told me to lie. I did all of that myself. His father looked at him. Are you saying you're gay? Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. I'm saying I'm in love with a man. I'm also saying I don't need permission to stop lying. No one spoke. His mother began to cry, but Daniel didn't move toward her. For the first time, he didn't try to make everyone else comfortable at his own expense. After they left, he stood beside the door with his hands in his pockets. I'm going to move out, he said. I nodded. That's probably best. He looked disappointed, but he didn't argue. For the next 6 weeks, we lived like strangers. He found a small apartment across town. I stayed in our old place and started therapy. Sophie moved to another city for a new job. There was no grand romantic reunion. No instant forgiveness. No magical moment where everything felt normal. There were apologies. There were long silences. There were messages I read and didn't answer. One evening, Daniel sent me a picture of an empty room. The caption said, I finally chose a place because I wanted it, not because everyone else approved. I replied, that's a good start. He wrote back, can I take you to dinner? I stared at the message for 20 minutes. Then I said yes. He took me to a small restaurant near the river. He arrived early and looked nervous. There was no ring on his hand. No wedding plans on his phone. No family members waiting to approve the menu. Just Daniel. I'm not asking you to be my boyfriend tonight, he said before I even sat down. Good. I'm asking if I can get to know you honestly. You've known me for 2 years. I knew your routines. I knew your coffee order. I knew how you laughed when you were tired. But I didn't know how to be honest with you. That was your choice. I know. I sat across from him. He told me he had understood his feelings long before the wedding invitation. He had convinced himself that if he married Sophie, everything inside him would become quiet. He said his parents had spent his entire life describing the future they wanted for him, and he had confused their expectations with his own dreams. Then he said the one thing I needed to hear. I didn't come out because I was afraid, he said. But being afraid does not excuse the way I hurt you. I looked at him across the candlelit table. You're right. I don't expect you to forget. I won't. I don't expect you to trust me quickly. I won't. He nodded. But I hope one day you'll let me earn it. That was the beginning, not of a perfect relationship, but of an honest one. We started slowly. Coffee became walks. Walks became dinners. Dinners became conversations that lasted until the restaurant staff turned off the lights. Daniel told his parents that he was gay. His mother stopped speaking to him for 2 months. His father sent one message that said, I need time. Daniel replied, take all the time you need. I'm not going back into the closet while you decide how to love me. When his mother finally called, she didn't apologize immediately. She asked questions. Some were painful. Some were ignorant. Daniel answered what he wanted and ended the conversation when he needed to. I watched him become stronger, but I didn't become his reward. I became his partner only after he learned how to stand without using me as a hiding place. 6 months after the cancelled wedding, Daniel asked me to move into his new apartment. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech. He simply held out a key and said, "This is yours if you want it." Not because I need someone to save me. Because I want to build something with you. I took the key, but I made him promise one thing. If you ever feel afraid again, you tell me before you make a decision that changes both our lives. He nodded. I promise. A year later, we stood in the same apartment with 2 coffee mugs beside the sink and a photograph of us on the wall. In the picture, Daniel was laughing with his head against my shoulder. Neither of us looked perfect. Neither of us looked prepared. But we looked honest. Sometimes people think the hardest part of coming out is saying the words. For Daniel, the hardest part was understanding that honesty was not a single confession. It was 1,000 small choices made afterward. He had to stop choosing comfort over truth. He had to stop making other people's approval the price of his happiness. He had to accept that being scared did not give him permission to hurt someone else. And I had to learn that loving someone did not mean waiting forever for them to become brave. The day he kissed me in that wedding dressing room, he thought he was asking me to save him. He was wrong. I didn't save Daniel. I made him tell the truth. Then I gave him the chance to prove that he could live by it. That was the first time our love became real, not when he whispered that he wanted me, but when he finally stopped hiding me from the world. And when people ask how our story began, Daniel always tells them the same thing. It began 10 minutes before my wedding, when the person I was trying hardest to hide was the person who taught me how to be honest. I usually correct him. It began 2 years earlier, I say. When you started saving the last cup of coffee for me. Then he smiles, reaches across the table, and takes my hand. No secrets. No locked doors. No pretending. Just the truth, finally spoken out loud.